Welcome back to America Salutes, and for the second portion of our program we have Patrick Kelly, the director of the Minneapolis VA Medical Center, and thank you for being with us today. To start, there's been a lot of publicity since some incidents occurred in Phoenix within the VA system, and there's been a program, VA Choice, that the VA has put in place. So why don't we start with dealing with those issues?
Sure, Milt, thanks. And first of all, thanks for having me back on your show. It's a good opportunity for me to talk about some of these issues that are important to veterans and the people that we serve. So last year was, in fact, a pretty challenging year for the VA, some of which had to do with scheduling issues, and there were some integrity issues that we were dealing with in our healthcare system. And while you cited Phoenix and some of the issues that had been raised in Phoenix, in fact, some of those issues were systemic, and we dealt with some of those issues and are dealing with some of those issues in our Minneapolis area as well. So we have grown a lot as a healthcare system over the course of the last many years. And so in our Minneapolis area, in our community-based outpatient clinics, we have about 102,000 veterans now from the state of Minnesota and western Wisconsin who get their healthcare with us. So that's put a little bit of pressure on the system and caused our system to have some access issues in some specific specialty care areas, eye clinic, audiology, orthopedics, dermatology, some of those kinds of clinics. As a result of that, nationally, the Secretary and the Congress approved a Veterans Choice Act, and as part of the act, it was intended, money was set aside and designated to buy care for veterans who can't get care in our healthcare system, either because they live greater than 40 miles away from one of our sites or because they couldn't access our services within 30 days of the desired time when they wanted to get their care. So we have been working since last November to deploy these Veterans Choice Cards. They're almost all deployed now. And veterans are exercising that choice, I might say in pretty small numbers. Not a lot of veterans have chosen to get their care outside the VA healthcare system. But that is one of the options in the Veterans Choice Program, is that they can, if they meet one of those criteria, seek care in the healthcare outside our VA healthcare system.
As I understand it, of the 102,000 people you serve, there's less than 200 have chosen to opt out?
Yeah, so far. I mean, the numbers, I anticipate that as the program gets more mature and veterans learn about it and learn some of their options, that others will choose to do so. But I think overwhelmingly, my sense is that veterans want to get their health care through one of our community-based outpatient clinics or in Minneapolis, and we are doing a number of things to flex up our services, which is the real goal, is to eventually bring those veterans who can't get in a timely way into our system through expanded services, through new leases, through new services being offered out in our clinics. So through a variety of means, we want veterans to get their care in the VA healthcare system, and overwhelmingly veterans are telling us that they prefer to get their care with us too, and we're going to do everything we can do to make that happen.
And the VA may not be perfect, but you're focused on the people you serve and making their experience better.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that 30% of our staff are veterans themselves. As you know, I'm a Navy veteran, retired from the Navy. On my executive team, four of the five are retired military. One was served in the military. We understand the needs of veterans, but we want to become laser focused on making sure that we hear what veterans are telling us. And if veterans are saying access through the phone system is not adequate, we want to focus on that. We want to make that better. If veterans are telling us parking is too hard, we want to focus on that and make sure that we address that need and meet the need. And so we, again, it's an opportunity. There is money that's being infused into the system, and so we have some opportunity to do some things that we previously hadn't been able to do due to either resource constraints or space constraints that we're able to do now that we hadn't been able to do a year ago at this time. So there are issues, there are challenges. We need to get better, but we have a good opportunity to do so.
Well, speaking of parking, one of your major initiatives is the new parking ramp, which, as I understand it, is not for employees, it's only for patients.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is one of our success stories. And so one of the great things about building parking ramps or doing engineering projects is that they're very visible and they're lasting. And so last March 17th of 2014, we opened a 520 garage or 20 space parking ramp just out in front of our main hospital that has really eliminated, or to the most part eliminated, all parking concerns that veterans have or have had. And it is exclusively for veterans up until a certain point in the day when veterans appointments have really sort of reached their peak, at which point staff can park in the parking garage. But it's right outside my window. I look at it every day, and as soon as I see it's full, we're going to reevaluate. But the garage is big. It's served a good purpose. Eventually, we're going to close off that 4th floor and make it an all-enclosed parking ramp. But in the meantime, I hear a lot of good things from veterans, and it's been very successful.
And if you're a veteran who has mobility problems and you need to use, and you've got a handicap parking sticker, you are able to park very close to the building so that you're not, as some time ago, one might have to be much further away from the building, and it would be much more difficult for that individual to access care.
The whole 1st floor is handicap parking, and then near the elevator on all of the floors is designated or dedicated for handicap parking. So I'm hearing from veterans that that's meeting their needs. We still have other handicap parking spaces on the campus, but that's close. Access is good. It's not a long walk once you get out of the parking ramp. So I think we've done a good thing there. I'm happy to say that parking ramp has been everything that I had hoped it would be.
And are there any other major renovations within the Minneapolis Medical Center?
You know, the one that's probably most notable to veterans, in our flag atrium, which is right inside the visitor's entrance, we have brought a number of services down into that atrium, the business office type services. So if veterans want to get ID cards, check eligibility, pay a bill, those kinds of business office functions that used to be in a variety of places throughout the medical center are now focused down in our flag atrium area. And that project was completed maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And I think has been very useful for veterans. Again, it's putting everything together, all those sort of member services, so veterans can take care of a lot of those business office functions when they get in the building without having to, our place is a little hard to navigate sometimes. Right. So it's been useful to get them all right there in the flag atrium. So that's one pretty visible thing that veterans will see when they come to our campus. We have a lot of other construction things going on. We're renovating our emergency department to improve patient flow and to add some isolation rooms and wash down areas for chemical biological issues. So we have a lot of patient care improvement things. But I think 2 of the things that are most visible to our veterans are both the parking ramp and the flag atrium, where they get a lot of their services.
Right. And many of your customers are served through community-based outpatient clinics, and I know you've had 2 of them come online, and you've had some improvement to the others. So why don't you elaborate on those facilities?
Well, thanks for bringing that up. So we have 13 community-based outpatient clinics as part of the VA healthcare system. 9 of those are in Minnesota, ranging from Albert Lea in the south to Ely in the north, and then 4 in western Wisconsin, up and down sort of the north to south in western Wisconsin. So 45% of our primary care is now provided in one of those community-based outpatient clinics. And so it used to be, not so long ago, that most veterans had to drive to Minneapolis to get their primary care. Progressively and more, veterans can now get that care in their community-based outpatient clinic. We opened a new one in Albert Lea in April of this year, and in Shakopee in June of this year. And in addition to primary care, all of those clinics have mental health services staffed by VA mental health providers. And we're putting more services, podiatry, physical therapy, optometry, audiology, particularly at the bigger C box, but we are expanding services where veterans live in order to minimize the travel and so that they don't have to travel to Minneapolis to get all of their care.
But Minneapolis, if one needs surgery and very specialized services, it's very efficient to do that at Minneapolis. But to the extent that one can receive care in a community-based outpatient clinic, that's the model you'd like to follow.
Yeah, and so we try to do as much as we can there, only because veterans prefer it. And so we do a lot of telemedicine in those community-based outpatient clinics. So mostly mental health services that we provide via telemedicine. But also, if a veteran gets surgery in Minneapolis, for example, we can do some of their post-operative care, from that community-based outpatient clinic, so they can go into their clinic in Northwest Metro or maybe up in Hibbing They can get to that clinic. Our surgeon can be on the other side. They can view their wound. They can make sure that it's healing appropriately. And then they don't have to get on the road and drive down to Minneapolis to get that care. You know, we got a great network with our county veteran service officers who provide a lot of transportation. But if veterans don't have to travel, that's better.
That's
Yeah.
better right
It's better.
from the start.
Yeah.
Well, you also have some physical improvements to some of the land and buildings you have, and the Burr project on the upper post of Fort Snelling to create housing. I believe the family portion of that's open, but maybe you can elaborate on the Common Bond project.
So Common Bond has been just a terrific community partner, and so they have been working over the course of the last several years, and this has now come to where we're going to open most of that by the end of the summer. So on Fort Snelling, many of your viewers will, of course, recognize the big Whipple building, but one of the things you won't see when you drive by on the highway is a bunch of old horse stables that, you know, based on the history at Fort Snelling, had largely been lying dormant, you know, since years ago when they used to have horses on Fort Snelling and the cavalry was there. Those horse stables are being turned into what will be 54 single unit housing areas for veterans that are at risk for homelessness. And then there will be also 4 units for families. Then those 4 units, you've already referenced those, Milt, those have opened. So 4 family units on Fort Snelling. They took old NCO quarters and converted those into housing units. But like I say, the stables themselves will be completed later this summer, and those are about, I believe, 600 square feet units for veterans, single veterans at risk for homelessness. The great thing about that is they are so close to our medical center and all of the supportive services that we can provide to them. It's 1 metro ride away, 1 light rail ride away. And what's very important for our veterans to succeed when they're trying to get off this at-risk for homelessness list is a whole array of supportive services, from training, counseling, addictive services, you know, any of that whole range of services that help them to succeed. You know, it's important that they have housing, but that's only the start. Once you get your housing, there's a whole array of services that we need to support them with and help them with. And that's one of the great things about being so close to our medical center. Many of those services are provided there. And we will go to the housing at over at the Fort Snelling area. The veterans will come to our place. And I think it's going to be a great project. In total, 58 veterans can be housed over there. It makes a big difference. I mean, we're making a big difference in homeless veterans in our state.
Very good. And you have the Minneapolis Veterans and Community Housing, which is sober housing, 140 units of housing on your campus. And this housing is for people who are dual diagnosed, and they have both mental health issues and chemical health issues. And so the VA's approach is one size doesn't fit all. You're trying to deal with the issues that the individual veteran has and to help them succeed.
Yeah, it was originally, the philosophy has evolved on that. There was a time when we thought, you know, prior to our really diving in to help that veteran, they needed to be sober and they needed to have all their addiction issues treated. What we have discovered that, you know, we need, the philosophy is now homeless first. We need to get them in stable housing and then help them deal with their whole range of any issues that they're dealing with in a supportive way. I mean, so they need to get housed. They need to, as a starting point, and then we will work on them with all their education and their work and any addictive services that they need. But that's an evolution in the way we've thought of housing veterans. I mean, we understand that, you know, if you don't have housing, you're really in a hard spot. You can't get a hold of veterans. They can't communicate with you. You can't communicate with them. So that stable environment is really the linchpin on making sure that we can provide all those services that they're seeking.
Right.
Yeah.
And the VA has made a goal of eliminating veterans' homelessness by year 2017, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And there's been many resources put there, and it's an interesting partnership because Housing and Urban Development with the HUD-VASH vouchers provides housing, and that's $7 of $8, but $1 of $8 is the case management that your healthcare center provides to our veterans.
When we did our ribbon cutting at the Fort Snelling compound, I was struck with the commitment in the community. There were community partners there from throughout the metro area. I mean, 7 or 8 or 10 community partners, all of whom were engaged in assisting homeless veterans or homeless citizens. And so yeah, it is we play an important role because we provide a lot of the supportive services and we provide funding for a lot of veterans who need some housing support. But it is absolutely a community effort, and without large number of community partners. And as you've talked about, it's Common Bond primarily at Fort Snelling, but there's a ton of other community partners. And in fact, the mayors of St. Paul and Minneapolis took a pledge last year to end veterans' homelessness, and they have stood up some pretty significant initiatives to help us and for us to help them together to make sure that we are finding housing and eliminating veterans' homelessness by 2016 or earlier.
Good. The greatest area of growth that the VAs are seeing is the fact that female veterans, more and more of them are serving and more of them are accessing services. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what Minneapolis is doing to make Minneapolis a welcoming institution.
Good, thank you. So we have about 6,500 female veterans enrolled with us in our system. For over 20 years, we've had a dedicated women's health clinic at the VA in Minneapolis, and we now have dedicated women's health providers at all of our community-based outpatient clinics. So it's a little bit of extra training, making sure it may not always be a woman provider, a female provider, but it is always a provider, at least one, trained in women's health services so that they can provide appropriate services for our women veterans. This last year, several months ago, we opened an integrated breast imaging center in our VA in Minneapolis. So, you know, as the number of women veterans has increased, you know, we need to keep up with making sure we're providing services. And so we don't provide a full range of services now. We don't deliver babies, you know, we don't do that follow-on care, but we follow women up until a point in time where we do a warm handoff with an obstetrician in the community. We pay for their care. The women then come back and get the rest of their care following delivery back with us in the VA. But, you know, mammography, getting mammography, doing integrated breast services is an important part of meeting women's health needs. And so we stood that up last year. It's one of very few in the VA. It's been successful.
Very good. Well, in our last half minute, what thoughts would you like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I want to thank our Minnesota veterans and Western Wisconsin veterans for their continued support of the VA. I know that this last year, you know, with the Secretary resigning, with all of the challenges publicly in the VA and VA healthcare, our veterans in Minnesota deserve great health care. We're doing our best to provide it to them. And I really appreciate the support of our county veteran service officers, our veteran service organizations, and the veterans who keep getting their care with us at the Minneapolis VA healthcare system. It's a great system, but we want to keep earning their trust, and we want them to continue to have confidence in us and our ability to provide their care.
Well, thank you for the interview, and
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for what you do for veterans.
You're welcome, Milt. Thank you.
And for America Salutes, I'm Milton Schoen, and thank you for watching.